Recording take 2. Hi guys, this is Vicky from SheChangedHistory. This is my mum's spare bedroom. It's beautiful. I've got my little podcast set up here. Simon was meant to be joining me and he's come down with the norovirus on Christmas Eve. Can you believe it? So yes, obviously he's not up for recording today. What we were going to do with our final episode of the year, because this will come out on New Year's Eve, is like women of 2024. So who changed history in 2024? And we both picked someone, like a little rundown on women that we thought were amazing in 2024. I'm still going to give you my story because we can't leave you hanging. You guys have been so supportive and amazing for us since we launched back in November. And yeah, so today will probably sound a little bit different. You got my dulcet tones in your ears. We still might do Simon's at some point, but we thought we couldn't pass up this opportunity to celebrate women who have achieved so much in 2024. And yeah, we want to thank you as well. This idea originally came from a Financial Times article called, let me just get the name, Women of 2024. One of the women on that article was Claudia Sheinbaum Pardo. And yeah, let's get into it. So what if the future of politics was shaped not by career politicians, but by scientists and activists? Meet Claudia Sheinbaum, Mexico's first female president and former scientist, who shattered glass ceilings while tackling some of the world's toughest challenges, from growing up amid protests and political upheaval to reshaping Mexico City, and now leading a nation. Her story is a fascinating mix of intellect, grit, and unwavering vision. Get ready to discover how a young girl inspired by activism grew into a leader confronting global trade wars and climate crises head on. Yes, so I hope you're ready. We've got some sources today. One is a Financial Times article. There's a Britannica article, thenation.com article by Arturo Cannon. That was really good. So let's dive into it. Claudia Sheinbaum was born on June the 24th, 1962 in Mexico City, Mexico. She's actually the second daughter of Annie Pardo Quemo, who is a biologist and professor emeritus at National Autonomous University of Mexico, UNAM. Her dad was a guy called Carlos Sheinbaum, and he is also a chemical engineer. So you can see already there's lots of scientist background, but actually Claudia is quoted as saying, quote, "In my house, politics was discussed at breakfast, lunch and dinner," unquote. So you can see there that it wasn't just science, it was definitely political discussions were taking place and influencing her when she was a little girl. Another really important thing that influenced Claudia as she was growing up was for several months in 1968, thousands of young Mexicans marched the streets, shouting demands. The reason the students were rallying was because they were standing peacefully, it's really important to note, peacefully, against the Mexican government. So Mexico has only had one rule of party politically up till that point. So this party, Institutional Revolutionary Party, has been in control since 1929 and ended up enforcing a lot of suppression, both economically and politically. So in 1968, Mexico is also due to hold the Summer Olympics. So quite a big thing for the city. And some would argue they're not focusing on their current citizens, they're focusing on their outward image to the world. Part of the government worrying about that external image to the world was 10 days before the Olympics. The government, who was currently run by Gustavo Diaz, or the peaceful movement to a halt with a huge massacre in Tlatelolco, which killed more than 300 students and arrested thousands more. These numbers are debated, but it doesn't take away from the fact that it was such a big event in the city and such a big loss to the population. What ended up happening is that because Claudia's parents were so politically involved, they actually ended up visiting the prisoners. So she's quote of saying, quote, "We brought the prisoners something to eat," unquote. They regularly visited the prisons, and one of the prisoners that Claudia's parents visited a lot was a guy called Raul Alvarez Garin, who is a really important figure in Claudia's story. He ended up becoming her political mentor later down the line, because one thing he did in prison was he ended up setting up a magazine, like newspaper, in the prison. And when he was out of prison, he actually gave birth to a movement in which Claudia ended up, that was like her first experience of active socialism herself, was with the movement that Garin formed straight out of prison, called the Student Committee of Worker Peasant Solidarity. So she brought him things to eat and then ended up joining his movements. Another little word on Alvarez Garin was that he was one of the main leaders of the youth movement, and he was also a friend of Claudia's mother. Claudia's mother herself had been victim as part of this movement. She actually had been fired from her role at the National Polytechnic Institute. The reason she was fired was for supporting students. In 1978, when Claudia was just 16 years old, she supported a hunger strike in front of the Metropolitan Cathedral in Mexico City. So at this point, she's already, standing forward. She's really taking on what her parents had shown her when growing up. Sheinbaum attributes her sense of discipline to her mother. Claudia says, quote, my mother, always used to say to us, sure, you're going to do other things, but school is school, unquote. So they clearly valued education and justice as a family, and they really did get involved. Claudia enrolled in the same university where her mother worked, at UNAM, and she studied physics. She also studied air pollution in Mexico City and travelled to indigenous communities in Michoacán to work on a project involving wood-burning stoves that would consume less wood and be less harmful to women's health. For Claudia's master and doctorate degrees, she studied energy engineering and conducted her doctoral research at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, which is in Berkeley in California, USA. Claudia's dissertation actually compared trends in energy consumption, comparing Mexico with other industrialized countries. So you can see here that this is something she's really interested in, this idea of energy consumption, climate, exposure, women's health. So it all kind of makes sense when you listen to her political movements later on. Claudia was politically active as a student and a professor in the 1980s and 90s, particularly with a party called the Revolutionary Democratic Party, which is a state-level socio-democratic political party in Mexico. It was founded in the 80s, so as Claudia was growing up. Many on the left who had never previously participated in elections joined in this wave for the Revolutionary Democratic Party, and Claudia ended up actually, while she was studying, ended up hosting meetings for this party in her house. The guy who led the movement was a guy called Cardenas, and she actually held rallies for him. So after this wave of success, which Claudia had a hand in, with Cardenas getting into power, in 2000 she was actually appointed, Claudia, as Mexico City's environmental health minister, and she was appointed this by Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador. I'm absolutely bolstering those names, I'm so sorry if I'm offending anyone. In her role as environmental minister, she oversaw the introduction of the city's bus system, which is called the Metrobus, and the construction of a second-storey beltway road that encircles Mexico's urban zone. So she was very much these really big projects that really impact people's way of living. Lopez Obrador lost his bid to become Mexico's president in the 2006 election that they had. So Claudia actually then returned to university, UNAM. She was part of the climate change mitigation section of the IPCC's 4th and 5th assessment reports and continued her scientific research there. That team, IPCC, was actually awarded a Nobel Peace Prize following the 4th assessment's publication in 2007. So she's excelling amazingly in this area and really contributing to the world's understanding of climate change. Then in 2015, Claudia was actually elected mayor of the Tlalpan district of Mexico City. In this role, she stressed the importance of water rights and fair usage. She does have some criticism, which is right for anyone in power. When she was doing these big projects, there was criticism of the amount of accidents occurring with these big infrastructure projects that she oversaw. One disaster was the earthquake in 2017, which hit a magnitude of 7.1, and there were several deaths that happened during that time. So from 2018 to 2023, Claudia served as mayor of Mexico City. One of her accomplishments was introducing a new cable bus system. So again, these things that are really big, really impacting people's lives. And this improved citywide commuting. López Obrador, the person who gave her the role as energy minister in the first place, won the presidency in the 2018 election. So López became president and Claudia became mayor of Mexico City. He writes that he wanted Claudia to coordinate his campaign and then join his cabinet as Secretary of the Interior, but that she actually preferred to pursue the role in Mexico City as mayor because she cared, I think. I think it's that simple. She really wanted to make a difference in the cities where she grew up and where she saw that turmoil when she was 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. When she was elected mayor, she actually received 50% of the vote to become mayor in a field of 7 candidates, which is insane. If you think of our Labour election that we've had in the UK recently, I think they barely got a third of all votes and they managed to win. So the fact that it was 50% of the vote in a field of 7 candidates is just wild, and it just shows how much support she's had. While she was mayor, her government expanded rainwater collection, they reformed waste management, they actually began a reforestation programme, so you can see all that energy and climate research coming into play. Like I said, she introduced this cable bus system, she ended up repairing the subway system as well because it was in absolute disrepair, and she put a huge amount of investment behind the infrastructure, which is something the government that she grew up with just didn't do at all. In the background, she does have a lot of criticism around the deadly accidents on the subway that she repaired. So the people are, rightfully calling her out on things. In February 2024, with the end of López Obrador's presidency approaching, Obrador actually presents a package of constitutional and legal reforms. The reason he's put this out is because Claudia was very much behind these proposals and it was very much aligned with her way of thinking and how she would rule. And there is an argument that López Obrador was basically setting up Claudia for succession. The package include many positive things, so things like generous pensions, above inflation minimum wage hikes, election of judges by popular vote. So all these things are very popular, and he was kind of giving her a really solid platform to be elected president. As Gillian Tett in Financial Times says, when Claudia Sheinbaum Pardo assumed the role of President of Mexico in October 2024, she made history in many ways. Not only is she the country's first female president, but she is also the first former climate scientist to hold that post. Sheinbaum faces another historical moment with Donald Trump about to become the 47th president of the United States. She confronts an American leader who has threatened to slap a 25% trade tariff on the southern neighbour, unquote. So it's important to note that Claudia had an absolute landslide victory, becoming the first female president of Mexico in 2024, but she does have Donald Trump looming very closely behind her. And she's also got Argentina's president of just over a year, Javier Milei, and he's also what's the way of describing this? He's much closer aligned to Trump than Claudia's position. He's described by one article as a wild-haired economist, a mix of Boris Johnson and the killer doll Chucky. So she's got a tough job ahead of her, but I think with her absolute meteoric rise to amazing heights already, and she's not afraid to do the big things, like do the big projects. Like we struggle in England even to get a railway in place. Like HS2 has just been an abomination on all fronts, but actually she's making really good headway on her home ground, so why can't she do that when up against different countries? In terms of legacy, Sheinbaum's ascent represents women in politics and the broader environmental movement. She's such a beacon of light in those fields, and she's managed to balance scientific insights with political strategy to take on modern challenges, which I think is so refreshing, because we've had a mammoth year of elections in 2024. So many countries have gone through these elections, and to have someone with this insight is it's fab, it's refreshing. As you can see from Sheinbaum's journey, it reflects persistence, science-based policy making, which is the dream, and inclusive leadership. Her story shows how she can inspire future leaders and what it means for Mexico's role on the main stage. I have really high hopes for her role on the main stage. I think, watch this space. It's been such an amazing rise to power so far, with so much good behind it, and the stats don't lie. There's a reason she got 50% of the vote. There's a reason people are behind her, and there's a reason people want this kind of leader now. And she's quite young as well. She's much younger than Trump, and I'm sure she can absolutely rally, because she's done so much good for Mexico already, so I'm sure that she can rally the troops on that as well. So that is why Claudia Sheinbaum Pardo is one of the women I think we should take note of in 2024, because she did change history. Hopefully that's tickled your taste buds, and hopefully that shows how this podcast is relevant, whether you're making a history today or 1,000 years ago. And there's just so much that women contribute to our society that we don't know about, and that is the purpose of the podcast. So thank you so much for listening. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of escapism if you're with one of those families that sometimes you just need a break. And thank you so much for all your support and listening to us both. I'm sure Simon will be back with us in 2025, and thank you so much. We can't wait to do more of these stories and share more with you. So have a lovely, wonderful Christmas and New Year, and we'll see you in 2025.